Today we're going to make bechamel, which is a white sauce and one of the 5 classic mother sauces. Now there are 2 white sauces, and one of those is velouté. Now, we did a video on velouté. If you'd like to see that, we'll put a link up here. But velouté is made with a white or a standard mirepoix and a white stock. Now bechamel is the other white sauce, and that's made with a mirepoix and milk or sometimes cream. They're made in a very similar way. So that's why I like to classify them together as the 2 white sauces, velouté and bechamel. Now, bechamel is great on its own, but you can also add other ingredients to it to make it more useful. Now, one of the best ways I find to use bechamel is to either make a sauce supreme where you add some cream to it, or a cheese sauce, a Mornay sauce, or even if you just want to make a cheddar sauce that you can use to make pasta with, like macaroni and cheese. It's the basis for a good mac and cheese sauce. My name's Chef Jeremy with Lineage Culinary, and today we are going to make bechamel sauce. First, I want to talk a little bit about starch and how it can be used as a thickener. There are 2 types of starch molecules: amylose, which is a long strain of glucose, and amylopectin, which is a shorter, compact, bushier molecule. Both amylose and amylopectin arrange themselves in the starch granule and are connected by hydrogen bonds. When heated in the presence of water, those hydrogen bonds begin to break and reform with the water, causing the molecules to spread out within the granule. This will cause the starch granules to swell and expand. As the starch begins to swell, the sauce will thicken. At a certain temperature range, depending on the different type of starch, but usually between 120 to 140 degrees Fahrenheit, the granules lose their organized structure and absorb a large amount of water. This is called gelation. And when this happens, the starch molecules form a web that slows the movement of starch and water. At this stage is when starch has its highest thickening properties. Now remember, amylose has that longer strand shape, and when heat is applied, it will coil, but it still remains relatively linear. So it takes up more space and has a higher thickening property than amylopectin, which, if you recall, has that shorter structure, more branched, bushy structure, and does not create as much of a web as amylose does. Starches commonly used in cooking can be broken into 2 categories based on where they're from: root starches and grain starches. Root starches are from roots and tubers and are things like arrowroot and potato starch, and grain starches are from cereals like rice, wheat, and corn. Root starches have a higher concentration of amylopectin, so they don't thicken as well as the grain starches. They may also provide a more glossy appearance. The good thing about root starches is A, they have a very neutral taste, and B, they don't require as much heat, so you don't have to pre-cook a root starch like you would a grain starch. So things like potato starch, tapioca, arrowroot, they can be made into slurries and added to a sauce relatively easy, and it's not necessary to cook out the raw flour taste that you will find in grain starches. Often you will use root starches as a way to thicken a sauce that's already been made, kind of adding it towards the end. Now, grain starches have a higher amylose content, so they will have a higher thickening power, but they do require more heat to thicken, and they can also have a flour taste that needs to be cooked out. Grain starches will typically have a more opaque appearance than root starches. For bechamel sauce, we're going to make a light roux. Start by melting butter, and we're going to add our flour. Now, a roux is a mixture of flour and fat, typically butter, but you can also use oil, and roux are commonly made with wheat starches. The benefit of a roux is that you're cooking it, so you are able to cook out that raw flour taste, and you're able to reach that high heat necessary for that amylose to start thickening. There are various stages of roux based on color. It goes from white to blonde to brown to dark. The longer you cook the roux, the darker it becomes. Here you can see the example of a blonde roux on the left and a dark roux on the right. Cooking the roux has a few important effects. First, it cooks off the raw flour flavor and starts to develop a toasty flavor that intensifies the longer you cook it. Second, the color of the roux will impact the final color of your sauce. That's why you want to use a white roux for a light colored sauce like bechamel and a dark roux for sauce espagnole, which is a brown sauce. And finally, the heat causes the starch chains to break up into smaller chains. This results in less thickening power the longer you cook it. So a white roux has the strongest thickening properties, but will impact the flavor and color less, versus a dark roux, which has less thickening ability, but has a more complex flavor and a darker color, which will make your sauce darker. The roux should look like wet sand. You want to heat your milk and add it to the roux slowly, stirring well with the wire whip. You want to add slowly and stir each time to make sure that you're breaking up all the starch granules and you don't get a clumpy sauce. Each time I'm adding a little bit of my warm milk, stirring, then adding a little bit more until I've added all of the hot milk. And now I'm going to bring this to a simmer. Now for my aromatic vegetables with a bechamel, you can either do a white mirepoix, a standard mirepoix, or today I'm going to do a studded onion. And that is made by taking a piece of onion and attaching bay leaves using cloves, whole cloves there, and I'm pressing the whole cloves through the bay leaf into the onion to secure that leaf onto the onion. Place your studded onion into the sauce and allow that to simmer on low. Continue cooking over low, stirring quite often because you don't want the bottom to scorch. Cook for 30 to 45 minutes and then strain your sauce through a pasta screen or through a sieve. And here I am using my spatula to make sure I get all that sauce through the screen. I place my sauce back on heat, season with salt, white pepper, some freshly grated nutmeg, and the consistency I'm looking for here is nappe, meaning it will coat the back of a spoon. So I hope that was helpful. If you enjoyed the video, please like, comment, and subscribe. My name is Chef Jeremy with Lineage Culinary, and thank you for watching.